Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. Today I want to talk about fairness, getting what you deserve in life, and how to deal with situations where you feel like you're right and someone else is wrong. I've talked about this in another video recently, but I wanted to mention it again today because I read some more about it in a section from Fuck Feelings by Dr. Michael I. Bennett and Sarah Bennett, and I thought they had some good things to say about specifically what kinds of attitudes and things you might do if you're in a situation where you feel strongly that you're right about someone and you're right about something and someone else is wrong, and how to handle the frustration that can come along with that. Reading a couple of things from the book, one of the first things they said that jumped out at me was, life never guarantees you a square deal, but you can be a good realistic dealer in an unfairly chaotic marketplace if you assume that no one necessarily sees things the way you do, no matter how obvious the truth appears, and that getting what you deserve is a lucky event, not a right. And this is a really important concept because I think it's natural for human beings to feel like there's one truth in the universe and that it's usually their truth. We tend to gravitate toward ideals and sets of beliefs that have one truth to them. And that's why we like systems of law or religious doctrine that very clearly lays out what people should and shouldn't do. But in reality, in our day-to-day experience in life, there's a lot of gray area. And the way that people see that gray area is extremely dependent on their own experiences in life. And so no matter where you come from, no matter how similar your life is to someone else's, even something as unchangeable as your brain chemistry, the way that your mind works, the way that your brain works physically, can impact the way you see and react to the world around you. So it's clear that no one person, no two people are going to see things the same way. And that's why we have to acknowledge that something that seems like it's an undeniable truth to us might not seem that way to someone else. Once you've acknowledged that, then you can approach those situations a little bit more reasonably. A lot of times conflict in our lives is born out of situations where we are at odds with someone who doesn't agree with us. And our goal becomes to make them agree with us. And that is a frustrating goal that rarely ends up being accomplished. Rarely do you encounter someone who disagrees with you who you change their mind. That at least in my life, that does not happen that often. Usually that person feels like they're right for some very strong reasons that match the strengths of the reasons that I feel I'm right. So how do you handle those situations? The authors go on to say this: once you know you're not going to get someone else, your boss, wife, colleague, to go along with your idea about what's fair, shut up and think. Stop lining up new arguments for why you're right, even if you think of better punchlines. Instead, mend fences by finding legitimate ways to acknowledge the other person's right to see things the way they do. So this is where compassion and kindness start to come in. If you've watched any of these videos, you know that compassion and kindness are very important concepts to me. I really think that a lot of our interaction as human beings should be guided by these two principles, by these two attitudes. If we were all more compassionate, more kind to each other, I think a lot of the issues that we have in our modern society would start to resolve themselves. And this is one of the ways that we can do that is by acknowledging everybody's right to feel the way that they feel and to see things the way they do. I think a lot of times even when it's okay to disagree, but we disagree that someone should even feel the way they do. And that's where we get into trouble. And that's where we start developing resentments. We start developing frustration with other people. We start to develop hatred toward other people. And those are dangerous places to be as individuals and as a society. So the author goes on to say, when there's no way to get a square deal, disengage from the argument and decide whether you believe enough in your own point of view that you don't need validation. If so, ask yourself what you wish to do about it. That's when, without argument, you're likely to look for a better job. Tell a partner he can shape up or ship out, or decline pressure from friends and family by saying simply you'll have to disagree and let the subject drop. Believing in your standards for a square deal, even when there's no way to get it, is what allows you to create boundaries and take independent action. So once we start to get away from the goal of, I want everybody to agree with everything to believe everything the way I believe it. I want everybody to agree that what I think is right. Once we get away from that idea and start building in this respect for other people's opinions, for other people's beliefs, and an understanding of why other people have those beliefs, then we can start to build some boundaries for ourselves, because this is important. It's important to know when to stop and when to say, okay, we're going to have to agree to disagree, and I'm going to base my actions on what you believe. So, if you're in a relationship with someone and they truly believe that some behavior that they have that you feel is unfair toward you, they don't see anything wrong with it, then at some point you are probably not going to convince them to change their behavior. And you need to decide whether to change yours by staying with that person and tolerating that behavior and accepting it as part of who they are, or by leaving the relationship. That's creating boundaries, and creating boundaries is important in both regular life and in life in recovery. So really critical to be able to not only create those boundaries, but to create the space in your life so that you can create boundaries. And we do that by recognizing that there are situations where we're not going to agree with other people. And that's when we can get a better sense of, okay, well, what actions do I need to take because of that, because of this disagreement? So finally, they say, knowing you can't get what's fair and then shutting up about it feels frustrating and demeaning and may make you feel defeated. In reality, you're simply butting up against the chaotic way good and bad people using differently structured brains and coming from different cultures come up with different ideas about fairness. If you continue to believe in your values, sidestep conflict, and decide what you can do with the choices you have, then you'll always get the fairest deal possible from yourself. So that's the goal, is that we set boundaries around what we are and aren't willing to engage with. We stand up for the values that we feel are important, develop those values and act out of those values, but also respect the fact that other people have done the same thing for themselves, even if their values aren't as seemingly developed as our own, or even if we really feel like their values are wrong. And their values might be objectively wrong, we still have to respect the fact that where they came from, what their life has been like, what their brain chemistry is like, all of these different factors lead to them feeling the way they do and them behaving the way they do. And at that point, this really becomes an issue of what can I control and what can't I control. And at some point, you've got to stop trying to get people to change the way they feel and start changing your own actions. That's it for today. Hope you have a great day, and I'll be back here tomorrow with more.